pinpoint solar eclipses thousands of years out, but ask us about next Tuesday's weather, and it's anyone's guess.
Right.
That contrast, I don't know, it always gets me thinking, why is predicting the future so hard? What does that say about how much we really know?
Well, it's a question that has puzzled brilliant minds for centuries. And to understand why it's so difficult, we need to look at something called chaos theory.
Chaos theory.
Yeah. It suggests that even the smallest actions can snowball into huge, unpredictable consequences over time.
It's like the butterfly effect we've all heard about, right? A
Yeah.
butterfly flaps its wings in Brazil, and somehow a tornado spins up in Texas.
Exactly. It highlights how everything is interconnected, and even the tiniest change can create massive ripples that we simply can't grasp all the variables at play.
So if we can't account for all the variables, how can we even plan for the future? It's a pretty wild thought, knowing a single decision today could drastically alter my life down the road. What about you? What are your thoughts on all of this?
It definitely makes you appreciate the power of the present moment, doesn't it? And there's a tool online called Carpe Diem that visualizes this concept in a way that really makes you think.
Okay, what is this Carpe Diem tool all about?
It takes your birth date and life expectancy data and creates a grid representing your entire lifespan,
Okay.
with each square being a week. The lighter squares represent the weeks you've already lived, and the darker ones represent the weeks you statistically have left.
Okay, I get the visual. What's the deeper takeaway here? Is it just a morbid reminder of our limited time, or is there something more to it?
It's certainly a wake-up call about the finite nature of time, but I think it goes beyond that. It encourages us to consider how we're spending our precious weeks. Are we using them in a way that aligns with our values? Are we making the most of the time we have?
That's a really good point. It's not just about the quantity of time, but the quality of how we spend it. Makes you wonder, are we making choices based on what truly matters to us? Or are we getting caught up in the day-to-day grind and forgetting to live intentionally?
Exactly. It's a powerful invitation to step back and ask ourselves, what do we want our life's grid to look like?
Yeah.
What kind of legacy do we want to leave behind?
Whoa, that got deep fast. It reminds me of that story about Reynaldo Dagsa, the Filipino councilman who accidentally captured his own assassination in a family photo. Talk about a stark reminder of life's unpredictability.
That's a chilling example of how we can't prepare for everything. But even with that uncertainty, there are certain large-scale events we do try to prepare for,
Right.
like catastrophic disasters.
Right, like how countries alert their citizens about nuclear attacks or severe weather events. In the U.S., we have the Emergency Alert System, designed to interrupt all broadcasts with urgent messages. Have you ever heard what an actual nuclear attack warning would sound like?
I haven't, and I'm not sure I want to.
Eh,
What would it even say?
Well, the actual message is pretty chilling. It would say something like this. We interrupt our programming. This is a national emergency. The following message is transmitted at the request of the United States government. This is not a test. A nuclear attack is occurring against the United States.
That's pretty terrifying. Just the thought of hearing those words broadcast nationwide is enough to send shivers down your spine. It's a sobering reminder that those systems exist for a reason.
Right. And that planning isn't for some far-off hypothetical event. These are real precautions for a threat that governments around the world actively consider. Makes you wonder what other steps are being taken to prepare for potential catastrophes.
Well, there are some incredible structures designed to withstand almost anything, like NORAD.
NORAD.
Yeah, it's built into a mountain, shielded with steel plating, and even sits on springs to withstand earthquakes.
So it's not just about surviving a nuclear blast, it's about keeping vital systems running, even in the aftermath. What is its actual function?
NORAD, or the North American Aerospace Defense Command, is primarily responsible for aerospace warning and control for North America. Essentially, it monitors airspace for potential threats, including missile attacks, so it's a key part of national defense, not just a super secure bunker.
Wow, I didn't realize the full scope of what they do. It's like a fortress for protecting the entire continent. And speaking of safeguarding the future, have you heard about the Svalbard Global Seed Vault in Norway?
Oh yeah. It's essentially a giant seed bank buried deep inside a mountain in the Arctic. They store millions of seeds from all over the world.
It's like a Noah's Ark for plants protecting biodiversity and the future of food crops. What other precautions are we taking or should be taking to ensure humanity's survival?
That's a great question. The seed vault is a fascinating example of long-term thinking. But it makes you wonder what other potential threats we need to be prepared for and what steps we can take to mitigate those risks.
Right. I mean, it's great to have a backup for our food supply, but what about other existential threats? What about pandemics, climate change, or even something we haven't even thought of yet?
It's a reminder that predicting the future isn't just about specific events, but about understanding the broader trends and forces that are shaping our world. And that brings us to another interesting aspect of predicting the future. The paths not taken, the what-ifs of history.
Like, what if the Soviets had succeeded in their moon landing plans? They had the Crescent 94 spacesuit all designed for their lunar excursions. It would have been a completely different space race.
Imagine that. Soviet cosmonauts planting their flag on the moon instead of American astronauts. The impact on the Cold War could have been immense.
Absolutely. It makes you wonder how different the world would be today if that one event had gone the other way. And it's interesting to think about how the Soviets were pioneers in many areas of space exploration, even though they didn't ultimately win the race to the moon.
They achieved many firsts. The first satellite, the first man in space, the first woman in space.
And let's not forget Laika, the first dog in space.
Oh, right.
Her mission, while tragic, provided valuable data that helped pave the way for future human space flights.
It's a reminder that progress often comes at a cost.
It does, but it's incredible that later missions with dogs like Belka and Strelka were successful. They became symbols of hope and resilience, proving that living beings could not only survive spaceflight, but return safely to Earth.
Their preserved remains are on display at the Moscow Cosmonautics Memorial Museum, a testament to their contribution to space exploration.
Speaking of historical turning points, did you know President Nixon had a speech prepared in case the Apollo 11 astronauts got stranded on the moon?
They were prepared to abandon those astronauts on the lunar surface. That's a chilling thought.
I know, right? It's almost unthinkable. Imagine Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin forever trapped on the moon with mission control forced to close down communication.
That's heartbreaking. What did the speech actually say?
Well, there's a line in it that always gets to me. Nixon was supposed to say, "Fate has ordained that the men who went to the moon to explore in peace will stay on the moon to rest in peace. These brave men, Neil Armstrong and Edwin Aldrin, know that there is no hope for their recovery, but they also know that there is hope for mankind in their sacrifice."
Wow. What a heavy burden to bear, both for the astronauts facing their potential fate and for those back on Earth having to make that impossible decision.
It's a stark reminder of the immense risks and ethical dilemmas involved in space exploration. And it also makes you wonder, how do you even begin to prepare for something like that? Not just logistically, but emotionally.
It raises so many questions. How do you weigh the value of human life against the pursuit of scientific knowledge? How do you console a nation grieving the loss of heroes who are still alive but forever out of reach? It's mind-boggling.
Absolutely. And it's a reminder that even in moments of triumph, there's always a shadow of what if. But let's bring things back to that Vega rocket launch we talked about at the beginning. Remember, it was carrying satellites designed to study Earth's health and predict natural disasters. I think there's an interesting connection to be made here between that mission and everything we've been discussing about the future.
I see what you mean. On the surface, it seems like just another space mission. But when you consider the purpose of those satellites, it takes on a whole new meaning. It's like we're using space to become better caretakers of our own planet.
Exactly. We're sending these sophisticated instruments into orbit to help us understand and predict the very forces that shape our future here on Earth.
It's a beautiful example of how space exploration isn't just about reaching for the stars, but about using that knowledge to solve problems and improve life here at home.
It makes you think about the ifs that loom large in our understanding of the future. If we could send one message to a potential future civilization, what would it be?
That's a great question. What message would you send?
That's tough. But I think I would say something like this. We may not have figured everything out, but we never stopped asking questions, and we never gave up on trying to build a better future. Learn from our mistakes and keep pushing the boundaries of what's possible.
I love that. It's a message of hope, resilience, and the importance of continuous learning. I think that's something any civilization, past, present, or future, can relate to. It's fascinating how space exploration often forces us to confront those big existential questions. It's not just about the science and technology, but about what it means to be human in this vast, unpredictable universe.
Absolutely. It's like looking into a mirror and seeing ourselves reflected against the backdrop of the cosmos. Makes all our earthly concerns seem so small in comparison, yet somehow even more significant at the same time.
Yeah, and it's not just philosophical either. Thinking about those alternative timelines, those what-ifs, helps us appreciate the impact of seemingly small decisions. Like if the Soviets had landed on the moon first, how would that have shaped the geopolitical landscape? What would that have meant for the advancement of science and technology?
It's mind-blowing to think about all the potential ripple effects. And it's not just about the big historical moments either. Even seemingly mundane details can offer surprising insights into the cultural impact of space exploration.
You're thinking about Comic Sans, aren't you?
I am. It's always funny to me that this font, which often gets a bad rap, was actually used for some serious space stuff. Remember, it was used for the Vega rocket launch documents, and even on those menus we talked about earlier in Moscow.
It's such a quirky juxtaposition, high-tech space exploration and a font that's often associated with, well, less serious matters, but it also speaks to the human element of this grand endeavor. Even in the most cutting-edge scientific pursuits, there's still room for personality and humor.
Absolutely. And speaking of the human element, the story of Laika, the first dog in space, always makes me think about the ethical considerations of pushing boundaries in exploration.
Yeah, Laika's story is undeniably tragic, but it also highlights the fact that those early space missions were stepping into completely uncharted territory. They were pushing the limits of what was possible, and with that came risks.
It's a delicate balance, right? The drive to explore the unknown, to push the boundaries of knowledge versus the responsibility to protect life and ensure ethical treatment.
Exactly. And while Laika's mission ultimately ended in tragedy, it provided crucial data that paved the way for safer spaceflights in the future, including those involving human astronauts.
It's a reminder that progress often comes at a cost. But thankfully, later missions with dogs like Belka and Strelka were successful. They showed that space travel for living beings could be achieved safely.
And their story resonated with people worldwide. They became symbols of resilience, courage, and the spirit of exploration. It's no wonder their preserved remains are still on display in Moscow. They represent a pivotal moment in the history of space exploration.
It's amazing to think that their journey paved the way for everything that came after. Speaking of pivotal moments, that speech Nixon had prepared in case the Apollo 11 astronauts got stranded on the moon really brings home the weight of those early missions.
Imagine having to write a speech acknowledging the potential loss of national heroes who were still alive but beyond any hope of rescue. What a difficult task that must have been.
I can't even fathom the emotional toll that would have taken on everyone involved. And the speech itself is so powerful, so poignant. The way it tries to find meaning and hope in the face of such a devastating loss is really remarkable.
That line, "Fate has ordained that the men who went to the moon to explore in peace will stay on the moon to rest in peace." It sends shivers down my spine every time I hear it. It's beautiful and heartbreaking all at once.
It speaks to the inherent risks of exploration, the courage of those who dare to venture into the unknown, and the sacrifices they're willing to make in the pursuit of knowledge and progress.
And it reminds us that those early space missions weren't just about scientific achievements. They were about pushing the limits of human endurance, testing the boundaries of our technological capabilities, and confronting the deepest questions about our place in the universe.
Absolutely. And while those early pioneers faced unimaginable risks, their legacy continues to inspire us today. They showed us that even in the face of uncertainty, even when confronted with the possibility of failure, the human spirit of exploration can prevail.
Their stories remind us that it's not about avoiding risk altogether, but about managing it intelligently, learning from our mistakes, and never giving up on the pursuit of knowledge and understanding.
It's about embracing the what-ifs and recognizing that they're not just potential points of failure, but opportunities for growth, innovation, and discovery. And that brings us back to the Vega rocket launch and those satellites designed to study Earth.
It's like we're using the knowledge and technology we've gained from exploring the vastness of space to address the very real challenges we face here at home.
We're taking those lessons learned from pushing the boundaries of space exploration and applying them to understanding and protecting our own planet. It's a powerful example of how science and exploration can be used to improve life for all of humanity.
It's a reminder that while we may be driven by the desire to explore the unknown, ultimately our greatest responsibility is to care for this pale blue dot we call home.
And that stewardship requires knowledge, innovation, and a willingness to face the challenges ahead with courage and determination. It's about embracing the interconnectedness of everything, recognizing that the future of our planet is inextricably linked to our understanding of the universe around us.
And as we continue to explore, to discover, and to push the boundaries of what's possible, it's important to remember that we're not just writing the next chapter in this story of space exploration. We're shaping the future of humanity itself.
It's incredible how space exploration has this way of bringing those big picture questions into focus, isn't it? It really makes you realize that the future of humanity is intertwined with our understanding of the universe.
It really does. And as we've journeyed through this deep dive into predicting the future, we've encountered some really thought-provoking concepts, from chaos theory to the emergency alert system, from Soviet spacesuits to presidential speeches that thankfully never had to be delivered.
Yeah, it's been quite a journey through the what ifs of history and the potential futures that might have been. It really makes you appreciate that delicate balance between our desire to control the future and the humbling realization that, we just can't predict everything. So, back to the original question we posed. Why is predicting the future so hard?
Well, we touched upon chaos theory, remember, which suggests that even with perfect information, predicting complex systems like, let's say, weather patterns, the stock market, or even human behavior, it becomes increasingly difficult over time because of the sheer number of interconnected variables at play.
Right. It's like trying to predict where a single leaf will land in a hurricane. Too many factors at play. But does that mean we should just give up on trying to understand the future altogether?
Not at all. While we may never be able to predict the future with absolute certainty, there's immense value in trying to understand the forces at play, to identify potential risks and opportunities, and to make, let's say, informed decisions based on the best available information.
So it's like using all the tools at our disposal to navigate this complex and ever-changing landscape. We may not be able to control the wind, but we can learn to adjust our sails.
Exactly. And speaking of tools, remember that analogy we discussed earlier about the Earth being a patient and space exploration being our way of diagnosing its health? We're using satellites and other instruments to gather data, to understand those complex systems that govern our planet, and to develop strategies for mitigating potential threats like climate change or natural disasters.
It's like we're taking a giant step back to get this broader perspective on our planet's health, using that vantage point of space to see things we could never see from the ground. And it's not just about reacting to problems after they arise. It's about anticipating and preventing them, right?
Precisely. And just as a doctor uses a variety of tools and techniques to diagnose and treat a patient, we need a multifaceted approach to understanding and shaping the future. It's not just about technology or data analysis. It's also about human ingenuity, collaboration, and a willingness to adapt to changing circumstances.
It's about embracing the interconnectedness of everything, recognizing that the choices we make today, both individually and collectively, have a ripple effect that extends far beyond ourselves, shaping the world for generations to come.
Right. And that's where the concept of alternative histories, the what-ifs we've been exploring, becomes so relevant. By imagining different outcomes, by considering the paths not taken, we gain a deeper appreciation for the complexities of cause and effect, and the importance of making conscious, informed decisions.
It's like holding up a mirror to our own actions and asking ourselves, what if we had done things differently? What would the world look like now? It's a powerful exercise in reflection and a reminder that we all have a role to play in shaping the future.
Absolutely. It also underscores the fact that the future isn't some fixed destination, but rather a constantly evolving landscape shaped by our choices, our actions, and even our imaginations.
What a beautiful way to put it. We're not just passive passengers on this journey through time. We're active participants, co-creating the future with every step we take.
And that's both empowering and daunting, wouldn't you say? We have the ability to influence the course of events, but with that power comes immense responsibility.
Absolutely. But I think it's a responsibility we should embrace with both optimism and a healthy dose of humility. We need to be bold in our aspirations, yet mindful of the potential consequences of our actions. We need to be willing to learn from our mistakes and to adapt to changing circumstances. And perhaps most importantly, we need to work together, recognizing that the challenges we face are too big for any one person or any one nation to solve alone.
I couldn't agree more. It's a reminder that the future isn't something to be feared or controlled, but rather something to be embraced, explored, and shaped with hope, determination, and a shared sense of purpose.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into predicting the future, what's the one key takeaway you hope our listeners will walk away with?
I hope they'll remember that while the future may be uncertain, it's also full of possibility. We may not be able to predict every twist and turn, but by embracing curiosity, fostering collaboration, and using our knowledge wisely, we can navigate the what-ifs and create a future that's both inspiring and sustainable.
What a powerful message. It's a reminder that the future isn't something that just happens to us. It's something we actively create through our collective efforts, our shared dreams, and our unwavering pursuit of knowledge and understanding.
We may not have all the answers, but we have the power to ask the right questions, to seek out new perspectives, and to work together to build a future that reflects our highest aspirations.
And that's a truly inspiring thought to leave our listeners with. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into predicting the future. Keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep imagining the possibilities because the future, in all its mystery and wonder, is waiting to be discovered.